On this episode of China Uncensored, you won't believe why the CCP kidnapped and tortured this billionaire. Actually, if you watch this channel a lot, you probably will. Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Chinese police have kidnapped and detained a Chinese-born Canadian billionaire. No, that's a different Chinese-born Canadian billionaire. Apparently, this is not a great time to be a Chinese billionaire. Today, I'm talking about Sun Qian. She's the co-founder of Beijing Liedman Biochemistry Company. She and her husband are worth an estimated 3.5 billion yuan, according to the WHO-run report, which tracks China's wealthy. But her situation is a little different from those other billionaires. Back in February, 20 policemen ransacked her home in Beijing and arrested her. According to her lawyer in China, in detention, she's been shackled, pepper sprayed, and not allowed to sleep. So what heinous crime did Sun Qian commit? Corruption? Embezzlement? Extortion? No. Her crime was much, much worse. She was meditating. That's right, meditating. Sun Qian practices Falun Gong. Falun Gong is a meditation system the Chinese Communist Party has been persecuting for nearly 20 years. As the Beijing First Procuratoric Branch said, Sun Qian was using a heretical religious organization to undermine the law, which she did by meditating in the privacy of her own home. Now, meditating may sound pretty innocent, especially compared to all the horrible things corrupt Chinese officials have done. But if you've been watching China Uncensored for a while, you know that there's nothing the CCP fears more than Falun Gong and its dangerous principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance. Except possibly giant spiders. Well, what's that, Shelley? They're not afraid of spiders. So just Falun Gong then. These people quietly standing there and peacefully sitting there. I mean, the way they close their eyes is kind of menacing. How could you not kidnap and torture people for doing that? But wait, you say, Sun Qian is a Canadian citizen. What right do Chinese police have to detain her for so long? Well, even though she is a Canadian citizen, she also has a Chinese passport, and China doesn't recognize dual citizenship. It's part of the Communist Party's attitude that ethnically Chinese people anywhere in the world belong to China, regardless of citizenship, or international law, or objective reality. And yes, that does also apply to ethnically Chinese pandas. Speaking of international law, isn't there any way Sun Qian's lawyer can at least get her deported to Canada? Well, guess what? She doesn't have a lawyer anymore. He was forced to drop her as a client because partners in his law firm told him that if he represents Ms. Sun or any other Falun Gong case, they will cancel his contract to continue working with the firm. That was after the local Justice Bureau put pressure on both the law firm and the lawyer. In China, justice isn't blind, it's dead. Now, what I want to make clear is Sun Qian wasn't publicly doing any Falun Gong related activities in China. She wasn't handing out flyers about the practice, protesting the party's persecution, or even doing the Falun Gong meditation exercises outdoors. After years of suffering from health issues, in 2014, she tried the Falun Gong exercises. She credits Falun Gong with alleviating her illnesses and continued to practice. So clearly, detaining her for meditating in her own home in Beijing is a bit of an overreaction. But this is the Communist Party, the same people who sent undercover police to watch the 12-year-old daughter of a Chinese human rights activist while she was at school, in the bathroom. Yeah, I'm not sure the party knows the meaning of the word overreaction. So now, how should we, as citizens of the free world, respond to the Chinese regime's absurd torture of Sun Qian? By keeping it as quiet as possible. At least that was the response from Canada's ambassador to China, John McCallum. When he was asked about Sun's case, he said it doesn't help the person in detention if we broadcast their situation in public, so I think for those cases almost all the time, it's better to proceed in a low-profile way. You see, outside pressure won't help Sun, and it could even jeopardize all the potential sweet deals between Canada and China. Like that one where a Chinese company can buy a Canadian company that handles military contracts without a security review. Or that free trade agreement. Or that extradition treaty, which should be sounding completely psychotic right about now. So you can see why some people in the Canadian government might want to, proceed in a low-profile way. But all the evidence suggests that if the goal is to actually get Sun Qian released, then lots and lots of media attention is exactly what's needed right now. According to her former lawyer, in the early days of her detention, she was kept in a small, darkened room, and that only stopped after the Canadian embassy became involved. And in another case of a Canadian Falun Gong practitioner being detained in China, it was the Canadian public outcry that helped stop him from being tortured. And after his case started to be a diplomatic embarrassment to China and Canada, he was released from a labor camp and sent back to Canada. Fortunately, there is a group of Canadian members of Parliament who are publicly calling for Sun Qian's release. MP Peter Kent said, "We think the Canadian government should be far more forceful in representing this Canadian citizen." But there's one Canadian who's willing to stand up to the Chinese Communist Party even more. Miss World Canada and friend of the show, Anastasia Lin. This week, she gave a speech at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva calling for Sun's release. And what was China's response to a beauty queen being the only one man enough to call them out for torturing a Canadian citizen? They said,
Falun Gong is not a religion, but an evil cult, and also an anti-China organization. The government of China has arranged help for those tricked into practicing Falun Gong.
Oh, right, I get it. Sun Qian, a woman who built a multi-million-dollar company from scratch, is actually really dumb. She was tricked into thinking her health improved when practicing Falun Gong. But you see, what's actually improving her health is being chained to a chair and pepper sprayed in the face until the can is empty, and then sitting in her pepper sprayed clothes for 10 days. It's all right here in the Communist Party's best-selling book, 10 Steps to Perfect Health with Chinese Characteristics. Let's see. Step 1. Admit that you're not as healthy as you look, or feel, or doctors tell you are. Step 2. Ask the Chinese police for help. And it looks like steps 3 through 10 are all just various torture methods. Makes sense. No wonder this book is a mandatory bestseller in China. Of course, Anastasia Lin is also taking a risk by speaking out. She's guilty of the same thing Sun is, being a Chinese-born Canadian citizen who practices Falun Gong. Though really, Anastasia's situation is even worse. She's gotten so much publicity. That really doesn't protect her from the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, imagine if they tried to do something to her. Why, there'd be a huge public outcry, which, according to the Canadian ambassador, would only make things worse for her, somehow. And in a way, Anastasia Lin and Sun Qian are even more of a problem for the Communist Party than other Falun Gong practitioners. Because as you saw earlier, the party wants to pretend that people who practice Falun Gong are just dumb, misled sheeple, old people who don't know any better. Surely no one educated or successful, like a Chinese billionaire or an international beauty queen, would ever practice Falun Gong. So Sun Qian is in trouble, and I bet you'd like to help put pressure on both the Chinese Communist Party and the Canadian government to rescue her. Anastasia Lin has started this petition online. It demands that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau do everything he can to bring Sun Qian home. Come on, Trudeau, stop hugging those pandas. You're just going to have to send them back to China anyway. I signed the petition, and I hope you do too. So click the link below or at the end of this video and sign your name to rescue Sun Qian. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.